Thank you guys for coming back to another edition of the Free Exchange of Ideas with Donovan and John. Um, and now I noticed when I did this video, when I did some editing before, Donovan's actually on my right side. On my screen, he's on my left side. So there you go. He's over there. Uh, Today we're going to talk about Ukraine and Russia and what's going on there, as far as we're actually being told, and
On there.
kind of our thoughts on what's happening there. I don't know if you'll like it or not. I don't really care. All 10 of you that are watching. Um, I want to let Donovan start because he actually has a lot of notes, and I don't. I have a lot of stuff in my head that I'm gonna just basically spew.
Well, one of the things, and like I said, I took notes like a week ago, and then I was studying today before the show, and was like, oh, there's new information out. Stuff I had was from like a month ago, actually. But I was looking at specifically weapons sent to Ukraine, and got new numbers like an hour ago. So and it was literally the article I was looking at said it was an hour old.
Yeah, and the funny thing, it's not just amount of weapons; it's new weapon systems to them.
Yeah, which I have. So I have a whole list. I'm gonna kind of go through really quick. I got
absolutely
17 different little. So weapon. This is as of I guess today. U.S. weapons sent to Ukraine. Number one was over 1,400 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. Number two, over 5,500 Javelin anti-tank missiles. Number three, over 14,000 other anti-armor systems. Number four was over 700 Switchblade drones. Five was 90 155 millimeter howitzers with 183,000 155 millimeter rounds. Half of those have been delivered by today, so 45 of them.
You said 183 rounds.
183,000.
Yeah.
So, and like half of those 90 have already been delivered, and so they're already training the Ukrainian army on how to use those. Number
it's
six.
Pretty simple. Open the breech, load the round, close the breech, get the fuck out of the way.
Well, hopefully they catch on. Number six was 72 tactical vehicles to tow the howitzers. They also gave a number seven. I have here 16 Mi-17 helicopters, Russian helicopters that were originally purchased to give to Afghanistan.
Right. I do remember that one.
And so number eight it says hundreds of armored, high mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicles, or HMMWVs. So this says hundreds. Didn't say how many. This just says hundreds.
Armored up Humvees.
Yep.
You're getting better shit than our boys got.
So number nine was 200 M113 armored personnel carriers. 10 was over 7,000 small arms. Number 11 was over 50 million rounds of ammunition. Number 12 is 121 Phoenix Ghost tactical drones.
Those are very cool.
Yeah, they were specifically made for Ukraine so the Air Force put them together really fast for them. That was mine. And I'll send the article, and you can click on all these different things too. You can read all the descriptions if you like. Let me see here. Number 13 was laser guided rocket systems, i.e. the advanced precision kill weapon system, which basically it turns rockets to precision guided munitions. So apparently that's a relatively new system. What I was reading about, advanced precision kill weapons system is what it was called. So number 14 is the Puma unmanned aerial systems drones. Those provide intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and recon. And they gave specifics in the article about how I think it could fly like 40 miles and for 150 minutes and stuff like that. They gave specifics on it. And then this was new. I didn't see this in earlier research. Number 15 was unmanned coastal defense vessels, or drone boats. And these can be used to rebuff other vessels and defend against amphibious assault. So they're unmanned ships.
Cool.
Ships. Yeah, I don't know how they're getting them there, but apparently we're sending them. So
they only got to go through from the North Atlantic. They can come underneath Moldova and right into that bay.
Moldova. Yeah. So I don't know. So yeah, but it was interesting.
I'm sure the Russians will be
like, oh yeah, go on through.
Yeah. Probably scare the crap out of the Russians once they see that little boat coming in.
So number 60 was M18A1 Claymore anti-personnel munitions, which are remote controlled mines.
Face toward enemy.
Yep. So I saw they had a picture of it. It was like this octopus thing. All like, ooh. So, and the last one I have is 17 C4 explosives and demolition equipment for obstacle clearing. So
17 what pounds?
no, number 17. That's the 17th one.
I see.
List. So 17th on the list.
But
So
they didn't
C4
say how much.
explosives
How much
and
C4?
demolition equipment for obstacle clearing. And then today, Biden asked for $33 billion in aid for Ukraine. 20.4 billion of that's for military security. 5 billion for additional drawdown authorities. I don't know what that means. 6 billion for Ukrainian security assistance initiative. 4 billion for State Department military financing department. So, and this is twice the size, twice as much as the $13.6 billion Congress approved last month. So we're doing, I think we're doing pretty good with providing the Ukrainians with
And NATO
the
nations.
supplies they need to fight the Russians. So
Yeah, and other NATO nations, including Germany this time, have said, "Yep, we're going to send stuff with the Americans." So
I had some notes on that too.
Yeah, they were like staging stuff at Ramstein over the last 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, but a lot of the issues too, like I was just reading that they asked South Korea for support too. South Korea is not providing any weapons or anything like that, but non-lethal supplies, I guess.
Medical supplies are just as good as bullets.
Yeah. So, but like Australia's doing $70 million in military aid. I don't have a breakdown of what that is.
Yeah.
Canada, 394 million.
Nice.
Military loan. So.
Military loan.
That's what it says.
Military, so Canada is paying Ukraine to pay us.
I guess so. So yeah, $394 million loan, military. Oh my God, what does my note say? I can't read that last word. But it's a loan. That part I can read.
That's what you get for drinking while you're taking notes.
Yeah. And then, I know, I wish. I haven't had a drink in over a week.
I drank really good last week.
Biden's basically united NATO and the EU against Russia and has coordinated a global response. Sweden and Finland are considering employees to join NATO now.
No, they already are. They already filed the paperwork, and it looks like it's going to just take about a month.
Yeah, and Switzerland's looking to join now too. And then you have Kosovo, Georgia, and Moldova have requested to join or are considering joining as well.
Really? That's huge. I had not heard that about Georgia and Moldova.
Hand it to the United States president for bringing things together. Right?
Not gonna argue with you.
But yeah, I mean, it's horrible what's going on there. I'm actually surprised. I mean, I was talking about this January, February with my buddy Joey, my other best friend, and I was like, he's not going to attack Russia. It's too much. It's worth too much for them. This whole global economy is like, it's basically still in tatters from the pandemic. We're just now kind of getting out of it. I was like, he's not going to attack. No, I was wrong.
You know what though? Honestly, dude, I think you weren't in the minority. I mean, I didn't think he'd actually attack. Yeah, I thought, okay, he's gonna ruffle some feathers here. He's gonna play a game on the border, and then he's gonna get whatever it is that he's looking for, and then just back away. And I had no idea that he was that insane.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see, and it'll be interesting to see now. Like, I know I was also reading today. Russia stopped I guess natural gas to Bulgaria and Poland, right?
Right.
So,
right.
So interesting to see, and that's going to affect them. It's still kind of winter over there. I mean, they're way more northern than we are. So, so it'll be interesting to see. But
that's another thing.
They want to be paid in rubles and not in euros or dollars. So and so so they didn't get paid at all. So how does that hurt the Russians too? Right? Okay, we're just going to cut off your gas, and we're just not getting paid.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing about that is, when he decided to say, we are not going to take the American petrodollar for our oil. You're going to have to buy it in rubles or gold. And then he put the ruble on the gold standard to give it some heft because it was worth, at that time, or just prior to that, I think it was worth a third of a penny, a ruble.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was. I mean, they were just
But
being
he's
crushed
basically kind
financially.
of inflating it right now, and it's working for them right now
Well, yeah, because
economically.
gold is still going up. Thank
Yeah,
God,
but
that's
it's
what saved
still
me from the
that's
Disney stock.
still once all these sanctions start really taking effect on them, that's not going to matter.
Well, and seeing the other
It's
thing
my
is
understanding.
right.
I got
Well,
a
and the other
PhD in
thing is
economics, so
most of Europe, most of Europe, the UK and Germany, who get a lot of their fuel oil from Russia, have uh, have
Germany.
agreed to cut them off.
Yeah,
It'll hurt them a little bit.
they're looking to. What I was listening to today was they're trying to diversify. That's not going to take time. It's like even here in the United States with the price of gas, we have oil we can pump, but there's no. It's not that easy. It's not. It's just you go turn on a pump,
Right,
and
right.
oil
It still
comes
has to
out.
be
You know,
processed. Yeah, it still has to be processed.
there's a whole thing that's got to be done, and there's not enough people. I mean, a lot of people lost their job during the pandemic back 2 years ago in the oil industry as well. So now there's less people too doing that. So
There's
it's
a little
not
bit of
like
that, but I think,
yeah. So
and
it's a complicated.
it absolutely is. But Europe
It,
has already has started making moves,
yeah,
and they
they're
think
already
it's going
starting
to
to make
take them
moves.
about a month to get off of Russian fuel oil.
Yeah. So
Um,
yeah, and
Norway, Norway, Finland, Poland,
I love the weed juice.
Germany. Germany was a big one. Germany was truly a big get for
Yeah, for the
uh,
natural gas.
natural. Well, no, I mean for the United Nations. I mean not the United Nations,
So,
for NATO,
yeah,
to
the
for
EU.
Germany to finally step into there and say this is the deal. We're just going to cut them off. I think that's huge. Um,
But yeah, it's gonna take time. I think they said end of the
yeah.
year. Yeah.
Oh no, it
So
won't take that long because they don't even get the pipeline yet, so they don't get that level of fuel oil yet.
yeah.
Um,
So
uh, I think what's going to take time is for them to rejigger their nuclear power to spread it out a little bit because I don't think they're going to have time to. I don't think they're going to have that kind of time to build or refurbish the nuclear plants that were going offline. It's going to take time. That's going where it's going to take time. That's where it's going to hurt them the most, I think.
I'm actually a big nuclear power advocate too. I think it's a
I am as well. I think
I
nuclear
like
power is the way it goes. Certainly the
yeah.
cleanest power that we have. But anyway,
It's relatively clean.
it's the only power source that we have where we can actually store the spent or the uh, throwaway. You can't do that with any other power source that we have. You can't do that with
We'll
electricity.
put
There's
it in
no
your
place to.
property. We'll put it in your property, John.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Fuck, put it right out there, man. I saw, to get off on a little tangent, just a real quick one. I saw where they are building, or there's a company that is promoting what they call neighborhood nuclear reactors. They can service 6,000 homes. They're very small and they can fit literally right into a neighborhood. Now, of course, if it goes China syndrome, it'll turn that neighborhood into slag. But until then, you have basically free power. And this
Yeah.
thing is supposed to be self-contained. There's really only a couple people on board at any one time. So it's supposed to be pretty cool.
Another
I can't.
topic for another day.
Yeah,
Talk
yeah,
about
absolutely,
that.
absolutely. So to get back to Ukraine, apologies for the cyanide sideways.
My
Um,
fault too.
um, so I am so impressed with just the people of Ukraine. For them to step up to plate and say, mothers and kids, just go. You can't be here. We need you to survive, just to carry the race. Um, and then the men to turn around at borders knowing they could get across, turn around at the border and walk back into a war zone, pick up a rifle they've never seen, take a week in training with it to kind of figure it out. They can now change the magazine. They can hit a target 50 yards away as long as it ain't moving. uh, I imagine there's a lot of spray and pray, but if I'm perfectly honest, I don't know that I would have done that.
Yeah, I think I
I,
can't remember if it was 16 or 18 or something like to 60. You have to stay. You have to
yeah,
stay.
16.
Yeah, so
No, I think it
60.
was
Yeah,
18. I think you're right, 18.
yeah, it was one of the two. It was 18, 16 or 18 to 60.
Yeah,
You had to stay. So I'm like, oh damn. I'm consider myself pretty fit, but goddamn, my knee isn't killing me, dude.
right? Exactly. Yeah, I would be a clerk
Yeah, I'll
someplace.
probably run faster than you, John.
Oh, that's right. I'm gonna get eaten by the bear. Um, but there there's a old axiom about Ukraine farmers. They know how to do three things. They know how to grow corn, wheat. I think it was wheat, grow wheat. They know how to plant seeds, and they know how to shoot guns. Why is that the axiom for a farmer? Now,
Yeah,
now the other
funny.
side of that is, I was going to say, the other side of that is Sun Tzu, who says better to be a warrior a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Jack, you probably, yeah.
Huh?
Well, it's funny you say that because one of the things I read was that Ukraine had become so, I guess, metropolitan with big cities and stuff like that. A lot of those people don't know how to fire a gun, right?
Exactly.
So that was
Absolutely
like,
true.
why would
Yeah.
I need to fire a
Yeah. I
gun?
live in a city. I have police. Um, absolutely. And that's true. I saw reports early on where they were showing just groups of men going into where they had the weapons and training facilities and saying, I've never even touched a gun. Large groups of men never touched a gun. Um,
I
I
mean,
personally,
it wasn't 30, 40, 50 years ago during the Cold War, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
No,
So that's a whole new generation of people who kind of like Cold War's history
yeah,
to them, right?
exactly.
But like, well, it's
Um,
history to us too, but we actually lived through it, right?
yeah,
So,
but for those people to just one to hold off any military, let alone the Russian military, uh, the only and I'll be perfectly honest with you, this is my thought on I can't think the northern city that
Kiev,
huh?
Kiev.
No, Kiev is more central. It's northern. Starts with
No,
an M.
Kiev's closer to Belarus. I was looking at it on the map because I didn't realize it was so far north.
Yeah, but it's still more central than this country or this city. And the people
Oh,
are
Mariupol.
Mariupol.
Mariupol
Yeah,
south.
thank you.
Mariupol south by the coast.
No, they're coming down from Russia and then going east into Mariupol. At any rate, I'll look at the map in a minute, or you can look at it while I'm
Looking it
spewing
up right now.
bullshit. All right, so for those guys, for the general there to say no, we're not going
Kharkiv,
any. One more
Kharkiv,
time.
Kharkiv. That's close to the Russian border.
Okay, what about
Kharkiv,
Kharkiv?
Kharkiv.
What about it?
It's close. It's kind of north and closer to the Russian border.
Okay, where's Mariupol?
Mariupol. Where's Mariupol on this map?
It's Mariupol, actually.
Oh, it's not showing here. It's fine. I'm gonna type it in. It's not
There you
showing.
go. Anyway, so uh, there's a general and some military there, and
Mariupol's on
they.
the coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
I
told you
don't know
that
why I
before.
kept thinking it was in the north. At any rate,
Mm-hmm.
so uh, there's a general and some military there, and they are holding off the Russian military. Literally, the only reason because they say the Russian military said surrender or die, and they said, well, you have a great time trying to kill us. They put all their civilians underground. I don't know that there's a tunnel out. I know that they're underground and they're still in the area of that industrial building. Uh, Russia has gone out of its way, literally out of its way, to bomb and send missiles at and tank ammunition at residential buildings, residential apartments, hospitals, uh, uh, birthing hospitals. They have not spent much time trying to break Ukraine's industrial ability, other than to go to Chernobyl and not do anything really there. And they went to another nuclear plant and shut it down, uh, which I understand takes about 12 or 14 hours to actually get it all the way to cool down. At any rate, um, that general has not been heard from since he said we're not going anywhere. So we are uncertain if he's still alive or if they are even still there. Russia says they have control of Mariupol now and are strengthening their positions. They split their forces and sent forces south to, is it Donetsk or Donetsk?
That's the one we were talking. We couldn't remember, right?
Right.
That's to the north. It's to the north of Mariupol.
Oh, yeah. It's to the north of, but east, right?
Yeah. Where's it at? I was just looking at it. It's just north of Mariupol.
Oh, I thought it was.
It looks like it's pretty close, actually.
Okay. At any rate, so yeah, they've split their forces. They're going to consolidate in Mariupol and hold that city while the rest of their forces go to. Please pronounce that for me because I think I'm pronouncing it wrong.
Donetsk.
Okay,
Donetsk.
close enough. Yeah. So they want to take that, and on the way, or after that, they'll go to Kyiv. In the meantime, their air force has been bombarding Kyiv. Yeah. Their tanks are going east. What did they say? They had like a 38 or 40-mile line of tanks and military vehicles going to the borders, the areas where the Russian border areas where they're separatists there, and Russia has accepted them into Russia.
Donbass. And
yeah, that one. The Donbass, that's right. So the only thing that Russia has going for it, because its military machinery outside of their aircraft, is garbage. And I'm not saying that just to be a snot. They actually have bad equipment. The funny thing about the Russian tank is actually kind of cool if you look at it in a non-defense position, because it's shorter than a Bradley Bradley Abrams. Thank you. It's shorter than Abrams, quite a bit shorter, but it's shorter because in the Abrams they have a guy who grabs the shell and loads it into the thing, whereas they have like a magazine around just inside the turret, and that feeds the cannon, so nobody's in the way. The problem with that is if they could put a missile right at where the turret meets the body of the tank, the turret goes biff, kills everybody in it.
I saw pictures of one of the tanks, and the turret was on the ground up beside the tank.
Yeah, not a pretty picture. Yeah, if you're riding in a Russian tank and you roll past that, you go, maybe I go be a clerk.
Well, have you seen? I was reading it over the weekend that someone was going around, and I guess multiple people maybe now are going around and painting Wolverines on the.
That is awesome.
I'll make sure I don't have it up, but I'll make sure I'll send it to you. But yeah, someone's going around painting Wolverines.
Okay, we will definitely put that in here. When he sends it to me, I will put it in here someplace. Yeah, that is just magnificent. These people have the heart of a lion. Every one of them. The only thing that Russia has on them is that Russia has a really deep bench. To quote a basketball term.
I'm gonna cut you off right here really quick, because one of the things. I'm sorry too. One of the things, though, I know. Yes, they have a lot of weapons. They have a huge army, but I think the interesting thing about this time around is how, I would say, disorganized they were in attacking Ukraine. It's kind of like the logistics of it. Yeah. I mean, they had at least a whole month to build up forces on the border before going in, and their tanks were running out of gas and stuff like that. I'm like, and you're right. Not only the logistics of the war, but also the weapons and the soldiers, right? Going in there, and it's kind of like I think it shows some of the, I don't want to say weakness of the Russian military, but definitely some things that were surprising to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm done now. I was just saying, I was really surprised at the ineptness of the attack on Ukraine. Right.
Yeah. So, well, and that's why they changed out. Allegedly, that's why they changed out commanders of that.
And now they're like, couldn't catch Kiev, so we're okay. Now we're going back to where the Russian separatists were at.
We're trying to rebuild from there. Yeah, I think it
Yeah.
was Napoleon who said, I would take 10 men who have a full heart for the war than 1,000 men who don't give a damn. And I paraphrased it poorly, I imagine, but you get the drift. He said,
Yeah.
if you got a heart for this, you're worth more than 10 men who don't. And I think
And
that's
apparently the Ukrainians have like thousands of prisoners of war, and there's been tens of thousands of Russian deaths apparently that aren't getting reported in Russia necessarily. But I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard anything about Ukrainian,
numbers.
I guess deaths. Yeah, numbers of other than civilians. I haven't heard anything about the military, so not really.
I heard a report, and I'm sorry, it was like a fleeting thing. I wasn't paying attention when it was on until it was off. But there were some reports of Ukrainian military deaths. They are high, but it doesn't seem to be slowing them down much. I mean, they recognize that this is war, and these are the things that happen in war, but we cannot lose this war. I think that's where they're at, and they're. Putin has made another threat of nuclear, talking about maybe using tactical nukes or small yield or low yield nukes in Ukraine. And I think that's just to keep people off his ass while he figures out what else he actually really needs to do. He did not an interview, but he did a meeting with the guy he sent to Ukraine to take over for the last 2 or 3 guys that were running it. And they were talking military strategy, like he would know what he's talking about. He's not really a military strategist. He was a KGB agent. It's not really military. He was in the military, and I think he was an officer. Nonetheless, I'm sure that the guy he was talking to was going, "You're dumb as a rock, pal."
So I'm looking at this right now. This was as of last month. Ukraine was ranked 22 out of 142 countries considered for the global firepower review. So out of 142 nations, they're ranked 22nd.
And they're probably quite a bit higher now that we sent them a bunch of stuff. But I'll tell you, I'm just really, really impressed with Ukrainian people. There's no quit in these people. They are fighting for land that is theirs by birth. And I think when you get that kind of, I don't even want to call them soldiers, because I mean there are soldiers, but there's so many civilians that it's like 5-to-1 civilian to soldier in their military right now.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because we're looking at, as I was saying earlier, about the generation gap between, me and you as Gen Xers would be like the elders probably in the military right now, right? If we were there, like all the other Cold War people, the boomers that like in our generation, those guys are all in their 60s and 70s and 80s already, right? So they're definitely not fighting. So they're kind of removed from that, and here's a whole new generation of people that either vaguely remember the very end of the Cold War, and then a whole group of people who it's like in the history books to them too. So it's kind of like, we're Ukraine, we've been free for as long as I've been alive, right?
Yeah.
So you got that whole there. So that's kind of a good thing too, I think. So that's interesting to look at some of the demographics of that. I'd be interested to see the demographics of that. And how many, if you got, 18-year-olds, they were born after 2000, right? So,
right.
So it's, their worldview is very different from mine and yours, right? Not just because they're from another country and stuff like that, but just,
they just have
generational from a 50-year-old to an 18-year-old, what their worldview is going to be like. I remember when Russia was, we were part of Russia, and then the 18 is going to be like, whatever.
Yeah. I know, talking to my dad, actually talking to my uncle, who I like very much, and I think he's 14 years older than me. And my dad was talking. I asked him, I said, why don't you ever call your brother anymore? You never talk to him. He goes, we don't have anything to talk about. We don't have anything in common. I said, how about your parents? He goes, no. I mean, like, I went to to uh, Poland. He was in Germany during Korea. My brother was in Korea and then went to Vietnam. My little brother, who I don't call anymore, didn't serve in a war, didn't serve in a war zone. We don't have any. Our concepts of what is life are completely different. We see almost everything. I see this page and he sees this page. We don't have any common ground to talk anymore about life. And I thought that's kind of a sad thing to say. But when I talked to my uncle, the younger brother of my father, he said pretty much the same thing. We just don't have anything in common to talk about, which I just found sublime, I guess. Not I didn't understand it until I started talking to people who are much younger than me, and by much younger I mean in their 30s, uh, who have a completely different view of what life means to them. Uh, and when we talk about, you know, when I talk to people, my partner at work, she is 32, I think, and I talk about Ukraine, she has almost literally no idea what I'm talking about. If I mention the Berlin Wall, it's an abstract concept to her. It's not a visceral thing like it is to me.
Yeah, she would have been 8 years old during when Berlin Wall fell. So she probably wasn't watching the news.
Yeah, she doesn't watch the news now, so I'm not sure she's grown out of that. But yeah, it's just kind of sad. But to see the people of Ukraine literally come together, 18 to 60 years old, as a single unit with a single purpose, and everything in their mind is to complete this job. Everybody is just like this in Ukraine right now. I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this war, because I don't know which way it's going to go. I really don't. I don't have a clue. I think, well, Russia went in with the I think Russia went in with the thought process of genocide. I really do, and they certainly acted that way uh, in their bombing strategies, in their fighting strategies. It's all about just destroy the infrastructure of cities and uh, short their people as much as possible. So
Yeah.
um, I don't understand that. I used to think that way. I'll be honest with you. When I thought about war, I thought about war as a barbarian thinks about war. The end product is this is all mine now, and there's no more of you. That's the entire thought process of a barbarian. And I think that was my thought process when it came to World War II in historic value. I mean, in historic, uh, like a 2020 kind of hindsight thing. Uh, that is what the Dresden bombing was. That's what uh, Pearl Harbor was. That's what war was. And that's what Putin is bringing back to the front of war.
Biggest military operation since World War II, right? So yeah,
Yep.
yeah. But
Yeah,
like I said, I'm also impressed that they just didn't have it together. I would have expected more from them. So not saying they still can't, because honestly they're probably fighting with one arm behind their back, right? So they're
but
not really.
I got to say, there's a couple of stories that came out of the Russian military. A tank commander was outside of his tank, and the tank gunner killed him, shot him dead. Yeah, they used to call that grenading in Vietnam. Happened to our guys a lot. Um, there was a couple other things like that, uh, or just absolute desertion. They would just get up and walk away from their post. Uh, and I don't know if there's no fear or they're just so beyond fear. Kind of like you kind of like what we were talking about earlier. They're their view of war is historic because most of them are like under 45. So it's historic. They've never seen a dead body up close. They've never seen what a bullet actually does to a human body, or what a tank round will do to a 5-story hospital. Um, they've never seen that in real life, and now they are seeing that in real life, and there's nothing to compare it to in their conscious knowledge. There's just nothing to compare it to, and so I think a lot of them are just going, I don't do this. This is not who I am. I took this job so I could learn a skill or something, and they just get up and walk away. So they've had more desertion in the Russian military than ever before. Even before in World War II. The other funny thing is, to me, is funny. They invaded Ukraine in the late spring, knowing most of the roads that their tanks would have to go on were going to be mud, and they couldn't go any further. They sank. They had to go because of that. Because of that one logistical failure, it forced all their tanks onto highways. When you do that and you stick them in a 40-mile line, they become just rolling targets for whoever's got a pea shooter, right? I watched a video of a guy who's a pilot, right? But the video is of him flying an A-10 Warthog in a video game, and he shows a line of tanks. Now, an A-10 Warthog is a misnomer. I mean, not a misnomer. It's like a nom de plume. It's actually a Lightning II is the name of the aircraft, and they call it a Warthog because it's got this giant nose in front of it, and that giant nose is full of a 60-millimeter Vulcan cannon. So the Vulcan cannon fires 5,000 rounds a second, I think. It's 4,000 rounds. It's an extremely high number. And they are uranium depleted rounds, so they go through pretty much any armor like paper. So he makes this run.
I like the titanium cockpit too.
Yes. So he makes this run on this line of tanks, just a single run. One tank is left not crushed. Just one. It's like, well, yeah, why aren't we sending those there? Because it's a pretty simple plane to fire or to run. It is like one of the simpler planes to run. It's a forward-thinking plane. That's all it does. It is not good in a dogfight. It is not designed to do that. It doesn't have a tight circle.
Everything I've read about it is that it can dogfight if need be.
It can't dogfight the MiGs. I mean, it's just unfortunately there's no comparison. If you get a couple of those boys in there with a MiG, the MiG might have some serious issues. But yeah,
yeah, it doesn't have the weapons like to take on a MiG, because a MiG will shoot that thing down from miles away, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and yeah, exactly.
Their weapons aren't set up. Not that it can't carry those weapons, is also what I was reading, but it's not. That's typically not what it does, right?
Correct.
So
yeah. They'll throw a couple of sidewinders on there, but mostly they're working that cannon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I just don't know what's gonna. Huh?
It's been almost an hour already.
Yeah, I just don't know what's going to happen, and I'm actually afraid that somehow NATO is going to have to get sucked into this war to make it stop. I don't know.
I hope that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Well, I don't know that NATO's willing to do that. I don't know enough nations in NATO are willing to do that. South Korea is a perfect example of.
Well, the thing is, one NATO nation gets attacked, or if one of them gets attacked, they're all in, right? So
allegedly.
Yeah, well, that's how it's supposed to work, right? And the United States. So it's like pretty much the whole EU plus freaking United States.
Yep.
And then honestly, you're probably going to draw in some of the Pacific nations too, like Australia, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia.
Well, Australia is part of the part of NATO.
Is it part of NATO?
Yeah.
North Atlantic in the Pacific? Is that?
Yeah. Well, we had to give it a name. They were the last ones in. So Aussies, they don't care. They got it natty anyway.
Yeah, it's so interesting to see that, and so my big thing too is like, if that happens, what's China do and what's Iran do, right? So
I think that's probably what's holding us back the most is what is China going to jump ugly if we get into it with Russia? Because we can literally just flood that entire area with military and pretty much smoke Russia, I think. But in doing so, do we leave the Pacific coast vulnerable to an attack from China? Or
China doesn't really have. I mean, they have a big fleet, but their fleet's nowhere near what ours is technology. I think they have a larger fleet than us, but our fleet's like, hey, we got what 11 aircraft carriers.
11 aircraft carriers that haul, what is it, like 120,
They got one or
130?
two, right? They got one or two aircraft carriers, right? So, and they're
I
building
think
the
they
first.
have four. I think they have four, but
Oh,
they have
I know they're
they're
building the first one. The ones they
they're
have were like hot,
yeah, they're
but they're
old.
building. Yeah,
They
they're
have they
building the
have
first.
two. I think they have two nuclear powered ones. They're the big ones now,
And
but they only carry a complement of like 109 planes or something.
that's a lot.
We carry 120, 125
I thought it was like 90 on the Nimitz.
on the Nimitz, but the Gerald R. Ford carries 120.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, she's a beast.
It's not that much bigger than the Nimitz, or it might even be a little
Taller,
smaller. I thought it's taller.
taller, more decks underneath, lots of elevators. Anyway, so I think that's all we really have on Ukraine.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Go
gonna be interesting to see.
Ukraine! That's all I really have to say.
Yeah, yeah. And I have a friend of mine. He's from Ukraine too. I haven't talked. I should touch base with him, see how he's doing. He seems to be doing okay. He was he was doing some traveling here in the country. So, and he lives out in California, but he's been stateside for a long time now, at least a decade, as far as I know. But yeah, and I met some Ukrainians at Gatlin way back in the '80s. So,
Oh yeah, okay.
and stuff like that. So,
I played
yeah,
in my church
I went
band.
I went out with a girl from Russia when I was at State too, at San Jose State.
There's a surprise.
So, yeah, I love the Russians. I love the Russian people.
I played.
I don't like the government.
I played with a piano player in my church band. She's from Ukraine. Her grandmother's still there. I did reach out to her. I think I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago. Texted with her a couple of weeks ago. Said her grandma was still in country at that time, and they were trying to get her to go out. I think there was some argument as to whether she would leave or not. Grandmas can be a bitch. There's a quote from a older woman from Ukraine and said, "I would shoot Putin in the eye and I wouldn't even shake." I'm like, wow, she's got bigger nuts than me. That's they're not scared of nothing, man. I'm telling you, grandmas ain't scared of nothing. Anyway,
with their
so
scandal.
with that,
Smack you with their scandal.
that's right. That's right. All right, so we're going to move on to another subject that is kind of close to my heart, and I'm not really sure how to respond or what I expect. But currently, there's a case in the Supreme Court. A coach from Washington State, I believe he's a high school coach. His
State of
case, yeah, Washington State, right? That's what I said, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Not like the university.
yeah, not the university. He's in Washington State. I think he's a high school coach. Anyway, he was praying before and after football games, and I guess they told him to stop, and he said, "I'm not going to stop." But he was never coercing any of his students or players to join him, and it was from some of the photos that I saw, it was actually quite a small group that did join him. It wasn't the entire team, and so they fired him for praying at school, I guess. And it's finally reached the Supreme Court. They did hear they did hear oral arguments, and they are now. Are they still listening? Are they still hearing him? Monday they were hearing him. I think that was the last day. Couple of justices. I've only heard from a couple of justices. Elena Kagan was one of them. Justice Kagan said, "Well, he has power as a coach or a teacher who can, and the student can say or can think in his mind, he can give me a slot on the team or not. He could play me or not. If he's teaching math, he could give me an A or not. I don't think that's a fair assessment of uh, it's a fair assessment of the position. It's not a fair assessment of the situation, I don't think. Especially as a Christian, that's not something that you would do. Having said that, yeah, there are jerks in church. No lie about it. It's one of the reasons I'm not in a church at this moment. Um, but overall, if you're going to pray in front of people and not be hesitant, that's not who you are. You're not gonna play a favorites kind of game, or you're not listening to me, so you're not playing, or you don't get an A. The work is the work. It always has been, always will be, and I think that's the way he saw it, and I don't think he saw it any other way. And football was a extracurricular, still is an extracurricular. Sorry, uh, and so I think that's where a lot of the rules get blurred as far as what you can and cannot do. Obviously, you couldn't do it in a classroom, but on a football field, it's a little different thing. And what you're praying for when you're in that situation, especially in high school, I remember my coach prayed, and he never prayed for us to win. He never prayed for us to lose, but his prayer was always that we would come back healthy and whole. And that was pretty much his entire prayer. He took a little bit longer to say it, but it was always about us coming back healthy and whole, and just enjoying the game. And I'm pretty sure that's where his mind was at. Thankful that our kids came back healthy and whole and enjoyed their game. Whether or not we win or lose is not the question, because God honestly furthest thing from his mind, I'm guessing. Um, but so now this is being heard in Supreme Court. So like I said, that was Elena Kagan's. Was more of a statement than a question, but she might have followed it with a question. They just gave us a little chunk of it. Dispersing after the game. This wasn't huddle up team. Kavanaugh said at one point, suggesting the coach's practice was acceptable. Uh, for me personally, because in high school I wasn't in church or anything like that. For me personally, it just was. I was grateful that somebody was worried about us and not worried about the game. And that coach was a little odd. Anyway, he was a lot of fun. Told some pretty good dirty jokes to a bunch of high school boys that should not have heard them. I'll be honest with you. But
the 80s and the 70s, man.
Yeah, right. But I there is no such thing as separation of church and state. There's from church and state. There's separation of church and state, which is only built on the state cannot create or designate a federal religion. That is,
Religion, yeah.
that's yeah. So, but I think what the argument here is the school, the state. It's a public school, so it is part of the state. It's funded by the state or state citizens through taxes. It's uses a state regulated curriculum, that whole thing. So me personally, I don't have an issue with this, but again, I'm Christian, and yes, I'm itching my ankle. I sorry. My wife would correct me. I'm scratching my ankle because I had an itch.
Ankle code for something else.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I don't have a problem with this, but and in high school I was not a Christian. I was not in church. I was not churched by anyone, other than my grandmother, and even then, I don't think I ever actually went to church with her. But me, in my heart, I don't have an issue with this because he's not coercing the children, and I call them children because they're still, junior, ninth grade to 12th grade, right? Those 4 years are very formative for those kids, but I don't as I don't see a coercion to come in, we'll pray, as I don't see that in this instance, I don't see a problem with it. Donovan, as a heathen, why don't you tell us what the problem is with it?
As a secular humanist, someone who grew up in the South in the Bible Belt in the 80s in high school, where they had a moment of silence, and there were prayers before sporting events with the teams and stuff like that. I will say the feeling of coercion from peer pressure from those is very, very real thing.
Yeah.
So whether the coach, so in some ways the coach is the catalyst for that, right? So, and you talk about protecting the minorities and stuff like that.
From what?
Point of view, stuff like that, religion and everything else. It's. I think it gets to be somewhat more difficult in those situations, particularly if we're talking about kids, right? We're talking about kids, so teenagers, right? And their hormones, their minds, their bodies, everything's just going crazy for them, right? And they want to be liked, right? They want to be liked. People want to be liked, except some people. But you know where I'm coming from, and that pressure, particularly if you're in sports, right? I was a jock in high school myself. I wasn't particularly. My parents didn't go to church. I went to different churches growing up in the Bible Belt there. I was joking with my mom about it. They would come by and go, "Hey, send your kids." And so my mom and dad would send us off to church for an hour or two on a Sunday with complete strangers. Like, what? Why'd you do that to us? Like,
So now
they want us to free time together, I guess.
so now I understand. Yeah, I was gonna say I understand who you really are now, and your brother
but,
and your sister. I've never
but
met either one of them.
but it was interesting, and I actually didn't start going to church until my senior year in high school. I actually started going to the Catholic Church. That was more of a social thing for me, though, not because I believe in God. And even at the time, I would consider myself, I was pro-choice at that point in my life at that time, even. So I definitely had some issues with the Catholic Church, particularly with the people I was with in the Catholic Church who were not pro-choice. So I definitely had that kind of.
Well, let me ask you this: to kind of stick on that a little bit. The church has the Pope has said the church is pro child, in essence. But we know tons of Catholics in Congress across the nation that are pro-choice. I know that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, he Catholic? I don't know if he's Catholic or not. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi for sure was one of them. I think there was a couple more that were told by local clergy that their church that they wouldn't give them was it last meal or something? What is that called? I'm
You're
sorry.
asking the wrong person.
all my Catholic friends are going to scream at me, "You dummy!" But I'm sorry, I'm not Catholic. I've only been to a Catholic church. I can probably count on one hand how many times I've been in a Catholic church, and twice I know were for a funeral. So
Starting to send my kids to private Catholic school was one of the hardest things I ever did. But my ex-wife was so surprised and happy because that's where she went to school at too. So, but
was she a practicing Catholic?
She's actually Methodist.
Oh wow, okay.
So, but
Still,
that's where she went.
Kind of Catholic light.
St. Mary's and Gilroy. Shout out to St. Mary's and Gilroy.
There you go.
But it was the best decision for my kids too. So I won't want to get into the whole other reasoning of why that was.
Yeah,
but my impression growing up in the South as someone, especially as a minority in the South, definitely, I'm all for separation of church and state, obviously. So I don't think, and it's particularly, the school decided not to renew his contract, and he decided not to reapply to it, so he wasn't really fired. But but that it got to be such a huge spectacle. I agree with the school. Like, it's this huge thing. I know I was reading that people from the stands ran out into the field and knocked over band students in the band and stuff like that too. So yeah, it could be
Oh,
bad for the
wow.
school district. Yeah, it's bad for the school district, right? So the school district's like, we can't have this going on. I understand where they're coming from. I agree with them, but I understand where they're coming from. Whether not because and not because and that not because of at that point to me, it's not about prayer anymore. It's about safety for the
Yeah,
school, and also look safety for the students and getting all this attention and stuff like that. And I would have to say that um, for the school saying you can't do this anymore, they have how many years of precedent of that being the precedent, right?
sure.
You can't do that. So, but this current Supreme Court seems to be leaning towards him more so, which will be interesting because I think um, even if it's not an outright, you know, win or whatever, it could be. It'll start poking holes in the separation of church and state for this country, and in my opinion, that's kind of what that's kind of what the Christian right wants, right? They want to poke those holes because they do want to make this, country Christian. And if you
Start
told me
out that way.
otherwise, I know so many people who would disagree with you I've argued with.
Start
um,
out that way.
but so it's still interesting to see that. But I'm
Well, see,
hoping I'm hoping the Supreme Court leans towards precedent on this, but it'll be interesting to see that, and we'll have to find out till the summer.
I think they probably will, and the reason I say that is because Amy Coney Barrett is very, um, she's very precedent oriented. When you see a lot of her decisions, some of the decisions are certainly more constitutional historically, but overall, I think she falls to precedent when she looks at cases. She said specifically when asked about Roe v. Wade, no, I'm not going to recuse myself, but there's precedent. There's already established law. So it would have to be something extremely specific for me to change my opinion on it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I also think that looking at what the Christian right is trying to do with this it's not necessarily a freedom of religion, but also a freedom to discriminate. And as the case was in Philadelphia last year, said here, Catholic foster care agency could reject same-sex couples without losing their contract in the city of Philadelphia. So, which I'm against. I don't think that's right. There's so many kids in foster care to deny a child or children who could get a loving family with a gay couple is just dumb, in my opinion.
I
So,
agree. Yeah, absolutely. I don't. The thing with, I mean, to kind of go on another tangent, staying with the the gay couple, I don't see a serious issue. If your home is clean, if you got good jobs, you're able to support this child, and no criminal background, right? That's one of the things for foster care or for adoption. I don't see why it matters who they're sleeping with. I mean, and I'll
but
be
this
honest, I came,
Catholic foster care agency apparently does. So,
yeah,
and they
well,
want
yeah,
to.
but I was gonna say I came to that honestly. I didn't believe that in the beginning. But I didn't understand better. Love is love, and that's you get right down to brass tacks. That's all that really matters. If that's the person you love, that's the person you love. I can't
So
argue with you.
it's, but so to me, so that'll be interesting to see what happens with
I
this
will
Supreme
be, yeah.
Court and what's going to happen later down the road too. And the Christian right's still going to press the issue all the way up to the Supreme Court and other things. So it'll be, they're not going to be like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, kind of like the left on the Second Amendment.
What?
Kind of like the left on the Second Amendment.
So I don't know.
No,
I mean, I don't think the left has been taking cases to the Supreme Court for the Second Amendment.
no. They've been just trying to change the Second Amendment down, 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 down. Uh,
So,
the Ninth Circuit just heard Young v. Hawaii, which was an open carry case, and actually there's a lot more involved in it. But 2 years ago, the Ninth Circuit had decided, in their infinite opinions, that you did not have a right to carry concealed. Well, that's fine. I don't. They want to permit it. They don't, but the state does. And California is not alone in that permit process. But they say, okay, you don't have a right to carry a concealed. Okay, cool. I'm good with that. Young in Hawaii just wanted to open carry, which is legal in Hawaii. However, getting a gun permit, because you have to have a permit to own a gun there, was almost impossible. And so the Ninth Circuit has decided, in their infinite opinions, that you cannot open carry either. Therefore, they take uh, the line in the Second Amendment that says uh, keep and bear. They pull bear right out and throw it away. So, and that is a weird tangent.
We can talk about that some other time too. But me and you've talked about that, but
yeah, you and I have discussed that on occasion.
But
anyway,
definitely.
So that's what we have for you.
It's gonna be interesting to see what turns out and what's gonna happen next. So
agreed.
Fingers crossed.
I'm not gonna. I'm interested to see how they opine. I'm really probably not pushed one way or the other hard. I prefer to see this guy get his job back and just going about doing his thing. But if they side with what has become tradition and precedent, then that's what they decide. And I'm okay with that too.
He could go apply at a Christian school, dude. He doesn't have to work at a public school.
No, but that's where he was working. I mean, that's for me, that was the thing. That's where he was working when he did that. And they, at any rate.
Yeah, so and like I talked about, I think there's different reasoning for it, but yeah. So yeah, but yeah, I'm done.
But so that's our opinions on Ukraine and on this school and coach in Washington State. I hope that there's no negative repercussions out of this case. And by that I mean I don't care which way it goes. I mean I do, but either way it's decided, I hope that we are as a nation able to just continue on with our lives and not get ballistic about it, because I don't think it's worth getting ballistic about. Agreed? I love it when you do that, but try again.
I disagree.
Okay, that's fair enough. And that's what this show is all about, where we can still be friends. Yeah, freaking heathen. Anyway, so that's what we have. Again, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that. Hit the bell notification so you get all of our shows. You don't have to watch me do all my push-ups. You can get right past them. And I am going to actually start back up on those next week. I'm feeling much stronger and good. Yeah. So do all those things for us. Share this video if you liked what you saw, or if you didn't like what you saw and you really want to piss off your neighbor, send it to them. We appreciate whoever watches it. We really do. Thanks again. You guys have a great evening. See ya.
Peace out. Peace, love, and soul, people.
There it is. Peace, love, and soul.